We're back, folks. We're doing back-to-back reviews. We just finished reviewing The Holdovers. This one I watched months ago when I was still gainfully employed, and we're just now getting around to it because I've been seeing it sitting on the shelf, and I feel guilty every time I see it, and knowing that I haven't discussed it. 1992, David Lynch directed Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me. So this was quite a process. Over the summer, yes. I found the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks at the local thrift shop.
And his friend Jose told him about
my
the
friend
show.
Jose. Huge shout out to Jose in Modesto for recommending Twin Peaks. So I watched season 1 and season 2, and then we watched the prequel, Fire Walk with Me.
We watched it all together.
And then we watched part 3, Twin Peaks: The Return. But I don't know if we're going to do a whole discussion on the series. I just want to talk about the movie.
You have to.
My series discussion that I last did was Gilmore Girls, and a friend roasted it and said it was unorganized and not great. So I don't know if I will talk about another sick series.
One man's opinion.
Fire Walk with Me. 2 hour and 14-minute runtime. So I really wanted to like this movie more. And the more that I read about it, I kind of solidified my feelings about it. It bothered me that the Donna character was not played by the actress from the television program.
Oh yeah, that was really annoying.
And this prequel was not written by Mark Frost and David Lynch. It was written by David Lynch and this other guy named Robert Engel. So Mark Frost and David Lynch, they're the creators of the Twin Peaks series. There was some falling out around season 2, and then they weren't working together. And then the networks didn't like the direction of season 2, and it started losing audience share, and it was canceled on a cliffhanger. But as I read, the actors of season 2, Mark Frost and David Lynch, did not return for season 2, and the actors did not like that, and they said they felt abandoned, and they felt like the show was going downhill. And so a lot of the original actors from the series did not want to return for the movie. And the network said the TV show was too expensive to make, and they just didn't like the direction that it was going. So David Lynch got an option for $75 million from the studios to make a trilogy of these. He wanted to make 3 films to kind of wrap up the show. But then Kyle MacLachlan felt like he was being typecast as Dale Cooper, which I think is an amazing icon of television. It's a great character. But he didn't want to get stuck in that role. So he only agreed to a 5-minute spot in this movie, and everybody said this movie was...
He wasn't longer than 5 minutes.
It wasn't a lot of time,
it wasn't,
though. They had
Kiefer
Sutherland in there, and they had some other FBI agents, and they were jumping around timelines. A lot of the original actors from the show did appear on the production of this film, but then all of their scenes were cut before the final version. And apparently in 2014, there was another version of this release with 92 minutes of deleted scenes.
What?
Yeah. So
when do we get our hands on that?
This is a very old copy. This is a 2002 DVD release.
When are we watching these deleted scenes?
I don't know. I'm kind of moved past it. I went through my Twin Peaks phase, and now I've moved on.
I need it.
So I thought this movie was masterfully filmed, and the cinematography was amazing. Guy by the name of Ron Garcia was the cinematographer. It was beautifully shot. And then also we get to see the Laura Palmer story. And I feel like that actress, what's her name? I'm looking on the back and I didn't write it down. Dang it!
And Sherry, I don't remember.
I think it's
Sherry something or other.
We're dropping the ball here.
She's
the actress that plays Laura Palmer is an amazing actress. And I think that's kind of Cheryl Lee.
Cheryl Lee?
I think that's part of your problem with this movie, just like it was for The Holdovers. You do not like gratuitous sex and nudity in your movies.
Or language.
And lots of language. So, the television show was made for TV. It's very tame by any time. Made for syndication. It's clean. There's not really any profanity.
At times,
but this movie is rated R, and it's got a lot of nudity, a lot of profanity. But I'm able to look past a lot of that because of the guy that plays the dad is also a very scary guy. And
oh my gosh.
There's a lot of intense scenes. This is a lot of tough subject matter. It deals with rape and incest. And just, there's a lot of hard subject matters. But
Yeah, it was very creepy.
Her acting ability is just so good.
90% of what makes it so creepy is that she's such a good actress and acts so afraid that you're sitting there terrified because of her facial expressions and her genuine, what looks like genuine fear and stress and just not knowing what to do because she's a teenager and all this craziness is happening at her house and we're like, just run away. But maybe that wasn't realistic because she was in high school. And anyway.
The film was filmed on location in Washington, kind of where the show was filmed as well. And I love that setting of all the forest and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Again, there's a lot of great casting in this. I did not like the recast for Donna, like I said. But she didn't, terrible. She didn't want to appear in it either. She changed her opinion. First, she said it was a scheduling conflict. But then later on, she said that she was bitter of how the other show kind of ended, and so she didn't want to be in it.
The truth comes out.
But, you know, it's still... This movie was not accepted when it first came out. And when it debuted at Cannes in 1992, apparently the audience members booed, and people did not receive this film. However, over time, it's considered to be one of David Lynch's best films, and it's on a lot of people's top picks of the 90s. Classic 90s.
I wouldn't say it was one of my top picks of the 90s, but you know.
I'm struggling here. I want to dive. I don't want to go so long on this movie unless you have a lot more to say about it, because of my last review was like almost 15 minutes long and I think people lose interest.
I don't really have that much to say about it. I think it could have been done just as well without the nudity and all the language, because obviously the TV show was compelling enough without that stuff for me anyways, but I think it was more just her as an actress that made it like as good as it was, like you were saying.
And I think that a lot of the old time Golden Age actors felt that way. A lot of them, like I was reading about that Dirty Harry movie that I reviewed a couple of reviews ago. A lot of these actors that were like iconic actors of the golden age of cinema, like they offered the part to like John Wayne and like George C. Scott and all these guys, and they're like, oh, there's too much violence, there's too much profanity, we don't want to be associated
Gene Wilder
with that.
was just talking about that too.
And then you see Gene Wilder in one of his last interviews, he said he doesn't like a lot of the modern movies because there's too much language and too much violence. And you know, but then David Lynch is like a very artistic guy, and he's just a very odd guy, and he pushes the boundaries. I've never seen Blue Velvet, but everyone says that's a very graphic film.
That's the problem with this and all of his other works, is that David Lynch leaves everything on a cliffhanger, which it does make you want to come back for more.
And that's his whole point.
He introduces too many characters and too many plot lines that he never finishes what happened. So he does that. He does that with this as well, and it's kind of like it makes you want to go on. But
and
then
he really did that a lot in The Return. He did that a lot on the Twin Peaks Return. He would introduce all these scenarios and characters where you're like, where is he going with this?
He did that a lot.
It didn't go anywhere, and it was
kind of frustrating. At the end, he always introduced new characters and new plot lines that had nothing to do with anything and never went anywhere.
I needed more Dale Cooper. He's one of my heroes, even though he's just a TV character.
I needed him.
So I think on Firewalk with Me, I'm going to go 3.5 out of 5. That's not what I wrote down.
Okay.
Originally, I wrote 3 out of 5, but then I was like struggling and I crossed it out and I wrote 4 out of 5. I think the happy medium is 3.5 out of 5. Yeah. Now, Rotten Tomatoes is even lower than that, 63%. IMDb, 7.3 out of 10, which isn't bad. But where do you stand on it?
I know I said 3.5 out of 5 already
for the holdovers.
But I'm at 3.5 out of 5 too. I don't know. It's a little too gratuitous.
Like the television show, especially, even though a lot of people said that season 2 was going down for them, and I know people like my buddy Jose, huge shout out. They love Twin Peaks and they've read all these companion guides and watched videos on it and done a lot of research. But it's like there's parts of this film again that we really like, cinematography, the acting abilities, but then there's other parts where it's just kind of like David Lynch goes off on these tangents that are never explained, and he has a lot of bizarre symbolism, which obviously that was part of the original. You do like the symbolism?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I wish he would wrap up some of the important parts a little bit better. But to his credit, I think maybe he intended to wrap it up eventually.
Oh, because like we said earlier, they were going to originally do a trilogy of these. And then this just was not well received, and so then this was it. So there was 2 other movies, and David Lynch really wanted to continue her story, right? He wanted to give this character justice, because if you really only see Laura Palmer alive in flashbacks, and then he said that like he really loved her as an actress, so he wanted her to get her right story,
her limelight. Yeah.
And a kind of parallel, it's like, you know, if you got into Breaking Bad, like that show went in its course, and then like they did Better Call Saul because they want to show you more of this other bit character, but then the other big character was Jesse Pinkman, and then he came back and he wrote El Camino to kind of conclude the story arc of that character. So I feel like that's kind of what's lost in a lot of this, is a lot of the stuff doesn't get resolved. But again, he does that on purpose. Lynch does that on purpose because he wants you to always think about it, so then it doesn't really lose relevancy. I don't know. But then it drives me nuts because if I want conclusions, and even the Twin Peaks Return did not give me what I wanted. It just left it open-ended.
No, it just made more questions.
So the whole world of Twin Peaks is just a very fascinating genre, and people go really into it. Nicole got me 2 t-shirts for Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
But I'm not as in-depth as you are, Jose. I appreciate your knowledge of Twin Peaks. We'll have to do a discussion about this one day, me and my friend Jose. And
on the channel.
We could go down the rabbit hole together. So if you haven't seen Twin Peaks, I'd really recommend the television program 1, 2, and 3. Before you watch season 3, watch this movie too, because it all fits in.
Yeah, I won't tell you why, but if you watch the show, you'll never look at creamed corn the same way again. So if you like it, if you enjoy eating that, that's your warning.
So sit back, watch the show, get yourself a damn fine cup of coffee, and
a pie that takes you straight to heaven.
Yep. Until next time, we'll see you then, folks.
Bye.